Non-roster spring training invites have been announced. We're going to go over the players not on the 40-man that will be in Tigers camp. We're also going to talk about Fangraphs projections for the AL Central and the Tigers, as well as AJ Hinch being the apparent Vegas leader in an award. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, February 8th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Alrighty, well, welcome back, everybody. Happy Thursday to all. So I gave you a little bit of a hezzy, all right, a little bit of a pump fake on today's show. I know yesterday we talked about doing the catching situation and breaking down the catching situation as a whole. We're just kicking that can down the road for another episode or two, depending on what happens on Thursday in the world of the Tigers. But we have plenty of time. We have all of spring to get through all of these player previews, so I'm not in any hurry to, get them done as soon as possible. Whereas things like what we're going to talk about today are things that just happened, just came out, are conversation topics immediately, whereas the other stuff is a little bit more evergreen, obviously, before opening days when we want to get through everybody on the roster, but we have a little bit more time. So just, again, kicking that can down the road for an episode or two. I promise if you're like me and you just want to talk about catchers more than anything else in the world, I promise that's either we might even do it tomorrow. Just got to depend on what else happens in the world of Tigers. That's also like 3 days in a row. I've had the template and the show prep done for the catching episode for like days, like peek behind the curtain. But Pacoda happened, and then the episode before that, we had like that grab bag where a bunch of stuff all came out in the last couple of days. Like I promise I'm trying. But today I really like the discussions we have on today's show. We're going to take a look at a different projection model, Fangraphs using theirs. We won't spend the whole episode on that like we did with Pacoda, but comparing and contrasting is the whole point of bringing up Pacoda in the first place, right? I in no way, shape, or form was I telling people that this was, like gospel and this was guaranteed going to happen. That it was the opposite. It was to open the conversation for if you like or don't like it, and they've been wrong plenty. And Fangraphs has a different perspective and a different opinion on the American League Central and the Detroit Tigers. So we'll talk about that. AJ Hinch is currently the Vegas leader, the betting favorite to win AL Manager of the Year. So we're going to talk about that a little bit at the end as well. But we're going to start here by talking about the spring training invites, the invitees, if you will, to spring the non-roster invitees for the Detroit Tigers were announced finally. I feel like we've kind of been waiting on the edge of our seat for these for a few days. 18 non-roster being non-40-man roster players, all invited to Detroit Tigers spring training to play for the Major League team. 10 pitchers and 8 position players. I want to start with the pitching. We'll talk about some of the notable names here, what we're kind of expecting out of all of these guys in the spring, and then we'll move on to the position players after. 10 pitchers. Drew Anderson, who we just picked up last week. We talked about him a little bit. Sean Gunther, Brennan Hanafy, Garrett Hill, Brant Herter, Jackson Jobe, Ty Madden, Devin Sweet, Andrew Vasquez, and Trey Winginter. I want to start with Vasquez and Winginter because a lot of people immediately are like, oh my goodness, they were on the team last year. They weren't that good. What the heck? Winginter was pretty good down the stretch. He was also hurt for a large majority of the year. And on this show, we prepped people for a while about how they were probably going to bring him back, Winginter specifically back, just not on the 40-man roster because they didn't really get a ton of opportunities to see him pitch, and his stuff is good, right? That's never been the problem. We talked about it mid-season. Trey Winginter, when he was on the mound, the stuff moves. He's got a lively fastball. Like I said, he's got a lot of movement, but just really struggled with command on a consistent basis. Least we forget back in April when he was literally like the closer. It was like 4 games that he lasted, and he blew that game against Toronto in Toronto. And I think that was kind of the nail in the coffin for that experience. But going into the year last year, when we didn't really know who was going to be the highest leverage reliever, Winginter got an opportunity to do that. Like, he has good stuff. So I don't mind bringing him back. Vasquez, lefty specialist with a good slider, not on the 40-man, fine. Devin Sweet, you knew that was going to happen because they just picked him up. Clearly, they see something they like in him. Ty Madden is, I got a question about Ty Madden relatively recently, I feel like. I'm trying to remember. I feel like somebody asked me about, because he was a guy who, when he was first drafted and on draft night specifically, myself included, and a lot of people were really excited about it because he was supposed to be a top 15 pick and kind of slid to us in the comp round. And yeah, it's been an up and down professional career. I think that's fair to say. There's still some high hopes for him. But there's certainly some stuff he needs to work on. So we're going to do our mailbag show will be Monday. So don't put your questions today. Put your questions in the, for on tomorrow's episode and over the weekend. I want to give people, I like doing mailbags on Monday to give people as much time as possible to ask questions. So maybe we can talk a little bit of Ty Madden then. But yeah, seeing him get a spring training invite is 2 thumbs up for me. Love it. Like I said, we'll save Job for the end. Brant Herter and Brennan Hanafy both getting an opportunity is super cool. Brant Herter, solid year last year. Both of them kind of making a name for themselves a little bit. Garrett Hill, still with the organization. He has major league experience. That kind of makes sense whether you like him or not. Gunther and Anderson. Anderson, we obviously talked a little bit about last week. So that leaves just Jackson Jobe. Jackson Jobe getting an invite to spring training. We had a conversation about this a little bit when I want to say it was Evan Petzold of the Freep was the first person to put it out there. The first person I saw, at least, to put out there that he was probably going to get an invite a couple of weeks ago. This is awesome. And I've said it a lot, and I'll reiterate this point now that we're kind of talking about this list a little bit more in depth. I seriously would not be surprised if Jackson Jobe pitched in the major leagues this season. I would be stunned if it was before May 1st, right? I don't think he's going to make the opening day roster. I think that they're going to send him to AAA to start off the season, double or AAA, wherever they think he's best fit. But it seriously, it would not surprise me if, especially post All-Star break or just like September call-ups kind of timetable, if he was in the majors. I wouldn't say that it's like a guarantee or anything. I'm not saying that it's something that is guaranteed to happen or that is super obvious or needs to happen even. We'll see how he plays this year. But it really wouldn't shock me whatsoever. So that's something that I'm kind of looking forward to. I think this, man, just like knock on wood a billion times. Like if he can just stay healthy this year, I think everyone is expecting a massive, massive, massive year for Jackson Jobe, myself included. I'm really excited about him. Really, really excited. I think this is kind of the year, if he can stay healthy from start to finish, that he can truly just kind of ascend into, he already is in most rankings, ranked as one of the best pitching prospects in the entire game of baseball. And I think he can take that even to the next level if he has a good year this year. So that's something to be excited about. And seeing him in major league camp is awesome. That's unbelievably exciting. Be up against major leaguers, get an opportunity to see his stuff against major leaguers. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. So let's keep the ball rolling. We're going to talk about the 8 position players that the Tigers are inviting to spring training. We will do all of that right after this. Game Time is the best in the business. It is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. They have all-in prices that show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. You don't have to deal with all those sneaky, hidden fees that a lot of other apps and websites use. You can also buy your tickets in a matter of seconds, legitimately 2 taps. I love Game Time because it accommodates my, I don't know, randomness, maybe is the word, my spontaneity, right? I will just randomly on any given day want to, you know what, I want to go see the Tigers today. And they have deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after the event starts. It is the place to find last minute seats. You can get exclusive flash deals on sponsored tickets from football, basketball, to baseball, to concerts, comedy, theater. Anything that needs a ticket, odds are it's on Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets and go to Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON, all one word, for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, capital L, capital O, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow. I'm planning right now. The plan is to have the catching conversation tomorrow. But again, we'll see if anything. This is like literally 3 days in a row I've been ready to do the catching conversation. And then Tigers news has come out right before I record. And it's like, all right, well, that's going to be what we talk about instead. So, yeah, that's the plan right now, but we'll see what happens. At worst, you're talking Tuesday or Wednesday. You know, like I said, Monday's show will be a mailbag. So soon we will start our player preview series for sure. Could be tomorrow. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports today. You can also now find it on your Amazon Fire TV. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day. You can find the Locked On Sports Today channel now on Amazon Fire TV. Locked on to the moon, baby. So we are talking about players that have been invited to spring training. We talked about the pitchers. Here are the 8 position players. We have Anthony Bemboom, Elizer Alfonso, Justice Bigby, Jace Young, Bly Madris, Justin Henry Malloy, Donnie Sands, and Ryan Vilade. So off rip here, everyone is going to look at Jace Young and Justin Henry Malloy. I think that those are Justin Henry Malloy makes a ton of sense. Obviously, you think he's right on the brink of making the majors. Him not on the 40-man is just, teams wait until they absolutely have to put someone on the 40-man until they do, right? There's no point in putting him on there early. But Malloy has options, right? You can send him down to the minors this year and whatnot. And that'll be a big talking point in spring training, obviously, right? I think one of the biggest, to be completely honest with you. I still get asked all the time about why I don't even really include Malloy in a lot of these third base conversations that we have, and we've had a lot of them over the last couple of weeks. So third base will absolutely be, I would argue, the biggest talking point of spring training, if not one of the biggest. But if you're talking about individual players, which again, we will have an episode right around when spring training games start about, players with the most and least kind of to lose going into spring training games. Malloy is up there. Malloy is going to be one of the most talked about players in spring training, especially if he hits well. That's going to force a really uncomfortable conversation to be had with this Tigers team in this front office, because I think a lot of people really want to see him at the next level. But I just do not believe that this organization has any remote, not idea, what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't think this organization has any intentions, that's the word, of playing Malloy at third base at the major league level. I do not get that impression at all with not only just like conversations had, but just like look at the last year, right? You can use your own judgment, just use the eye test and look at what they've done and where he's been playing, especially in the second half of the year, and how they've kind of handled his development. I think if they were confident in the glove at third, we probably would have seen him last year. And I think that he's going to play a lot of corner outfield this upcoming season. And if he does make the majors, probably DH a decent amount. And so I think that, again, he's going to be one of the more talked about players in all of camp. I love the hitter. I'm so beyond excited to have this OBP machine just on this roster, right? I think he perfectly epitomizes what this team wants to do. I love watching his at-bats in Toledo. I love the dude, right? He's like my dream hitting profile. But I think they really want to make sure they have a home for him defensively, even relatively consistently, that isn't making a rookie DH. I don't think the Tigers want to do that. Whether you agree or disagree with that is fine. That's your own volition. That's the beauty of this. That's everybody. There's a million ways to build a winner. But I don't think the Tigers are one of those teams. I think they're jumping for joy that they don't have a guaranteed person at DH every night. So we've had this conversation a lot before. We'll continue having it, but Malloy obviously was always going to get an invite. It's just a matter of kind of looking ahead for the rest of spring and what his just the storyline of following him throughout spring training is going to be one of the biggest on the team. Jace Young, cool. Don't expect him to make the team out of camp whatsoever, but I think there is a decent chance that he plays Major League Baseball for the Tigers this year as well. If he gets off to a good, solid, strong first half, he could absolutely be playing third, post All-Star break or post trade deadline. Justice Bigby, friend of the program, interviewed him probably a couple months ago now, was on the show, but great dude, and getting an opportunity is really cool. Again, not a guy that I expect to make the team out of camp certainly, and another guy, to be completely fair, if we're having the conversation about Malloy and trying to find a home defensively, Bigby is on a smaller scale, kind of a similar conversation. He hit like crazy last year, has a lot going for him. I think they want to see the power develop a little bit more, but I also think that they want him to be established at some place on the field as well. He's another guy that's played a lot of corner outfield recently. So that'll be someone fun to watch. Bly Madris has been in this organization like 3 different times in the last year. Donnie Sands makes sense. They always take as much catching depth as they can, even if Sands isn't on the 40-man anymore. And then, Alfonso Bemboom and Vlad hodgepodge of guys that they've picked up throughout the winter and people in the organization. So, there's your 18 players. And that's kind of my initial gut reaction. I don't expect any of these 18 to make the opening day roster. I know that we've had this conversation before. We'll keep having it. I don't have Justin Henry Malloy on my opening day roster right now, but I know plenty of people do. And I don't blame you. I totally see the vision. I think that he's probably going to start off the year down in Toledo again. But again, that's a conversation we can have much more in depth as we get closer to the start of the season. Okay, so those are your 18 non-roster invites. Let's talk about Fangraphs projections of the Detroit baseball Tigers. So Fangraphs released their win-loss projections, just like Pacoda did on yesterday's show, right? And this Fangraphs likes the Tigers a little bit more than Pacoda, and also is more sour on the top teams in the AL Central as well. So as it stands right now, they have the Minnesota Twins going 85-77, taking first place. The Cleveland Guardians going 80-82 and taking second place. The Tigers going 79-83, taking third place. The Royals going 75-87, taking fourth. 75 wins for the Royals. 75. It's almost a 20-win improvement. Crazy. Chicago White Sox going 67-95, being last place in the AL Central. So immediately, like I said, kind of first thoughts here are just that they are not as confident in the Twins and Guardians as Pacoda is, and a little bit more confident in the Tigers and the Royals. Even, Fangraphs loves the Royals offseason, clearly, because that's a really, really big improvement. But I think that this reflects my viewpoint of the Tigers, and honestly, the AL Central outside of the Royals. I don't think the Royals are going to improve by 20 wins, but the rest of the division, this is much more in line with how I view the AL Central than Pacoda, much more. I think the Twins are the betting favorite. I think they should be. I think they deserve to be. They still have Pablo. They still have, Correa maybe bounces back. They still have a young, retainable talent on that team, but didn't really do anything different than last year when they had a mid-80s win total. And then Cleveland, like I we don't have to go back down that rabbit hole, but I explained yesterday, kind of always. I'm always going to think they have the ability to be at or around 500, give or take, 5-6 wins in either direction. So they're a team that is not, around 80 wins is about where I would have them too. And then the Tigers, like I said, 79 and 83, I think is a little bit closer. I said yesterday, my view of the Tigers is a little bit closer to that 500 mark than the 75 wins that Bakota had. So there you go. If you were really mad yesterday at the Bakota projections, you have the Fangraphs, which is a little bit more favorable to the Detroit Tigers and their chances in the American League Central. Fangraphs also attaches a percent chance of winning the division, making the playoffs, clinching a bye, etc. We will talk about where the Tigers and the rest of the teams in the AL Central stand on those right after this. Happy Super Bowl to all of those who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. There are so many fun bets for the Super Bowl, right? Coin toss, always one of my favorites. You just start out with a bang, right? Tails never fails, you know what they say. But that's always a fun one. You got a lot of props as well, just more traditional stuff. Who's going to score the first touchdown? FanDuel has so many ways to help you end your season with a W or 2 or 3. You can bet on just how many points will be scored, and so much more. So new customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate you all greatly for tuning in, as always. Appreciate you all, for real, for the consistent and constant support throughout the off season, right? The winter, obviously, a lot slower than the middle of the summer when the boys of summer are playing, but this shows support and numbers really didn't waver even a little bit. So I appreciate you all very, very much for allowing me to do this. We are talking about Fangraphs and their prediction of the Tigers. Talked all episode yesterday about Bakota. Take a little bit of time here and just compare and contrast it to Fangraphs. We already did the win totals, but I think that the one thing I like about Bakota is the bell graph part that we explained, right? Because at the end of the day, trying to exactly predict a team to get down to exactly one number is nearly impossible with 162 games in the season. And so I think that at least with like consistency, right, you can, quote unquote, luck into one. But so I like the bell graph that Bakota does because it gives you, okay, this is the most common record they had, but there's also, 30% of the Sims had you at over 500 and whatever. So Fangraphs has somewhat of a version of that. Rather than a visual like that, it's just percent chances to achieve certain things. So the Tigers have a 17.1% chance to win the American League Central, according to Fangraphs, a 4.5% chance to clinch a bye, which would have them as a top 2 record in the American League, a 9.6% chance to clinch the wild card, adding up to a 26.7% chance of making the postseason. So there's a few things that jump out at you here. One is Fangraphs' opinion of the American League Central. They think it is going to be easier to win the AL Central than it is to go and clinch a wild card. I don't think anyone listening to this show is surprised by that take. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that that's probably true, and that the winner of the AL Central may not have 90 wins. I think some people would even say it's likely the winner of the AL Central doesn't win 90 games. Whereas the worst wildcard team last year had a better record than the team that won the Central, and the NL Central is not too much better, right, as it stands right now, especially with the Brewers kind of tearing it down. So I do think that that is something that just jumped out at me right away. But I think the biggest thing here is just percent chance to make the postseason, 26.7%. That's third in the division. Cleveland, 33.2%, and the Twins, 64.3%. The Royals, 10.8%, and the White Sox at 0.8% chance to make the postseason. So they have you as pretty comfortably better than the Kansas City Royals, but in that similar tier to the Guardians, right? 22% chance to win the division for the Guardians, 17 to win the division for the Tigers. So kind of in that similar class, neither of you are even close to the Twins odds here, according to Fangraphs, but being in that conversation of, you know what, second in the division, if they go on a hot streak, 26.7 is over a quarter, right? Over a quarter chance to better than 1 in 4 odds to make the postseason. I think if again, that's one website's prediction model. This is grain of salt. Certainly not telling you that this is exactly going to happen or that you should take this with any amount of like actual, I don't know, like seriousness, I guess is the word I'm going to use. But at the end of the day, if you would tell, I think a lot of the fan base going into the season that you have a better than 1 in 4 shot at making the postseason, I think we would all probably take that. I think we go, yeah, I'll take better than 1 in 4 odds, right? It really, and a lot of it comes down to your opinion of Cleveland and I guess Captain Obvious moment, but your opinion of the Twins, obviously, who won the division last year and are fixing to be one of the better teams in the division this year as well. Okay, so just wanted to throw that out there, give another national perspective that's not PECOTA since we spent so much time on it yesterday. The last thing I want to talk about is AJ Hinch is currently, according to our friends over at FanDuel, the betting favorite to win AL Manager of the Year. His odds are plus 550, and that is the best in, obviously, the American League. I think that well, I'm not going to say that, Manager of the Year is some super prestigious type of award and that AJ should absolutely win it or anything like that. But plus 550, the next closest is Quattraro in Kansas City. I lost my spot there, who has plus 650. And then after that, it's Kevin Cash, Stephen Vogt, Scott Cervais at plus 900, 950, and 1,000. So, like, Hinch is a pretty heavy favorite at that. It's not even really like, oh, there's a few, nobody really knows. There's a few people all around. He's a pretty heavy favorite, actually. Pretty heavy. It's and seeing, the manager of the Royals be second is also something. The reason why I think that this is a thing and you're seeing these odds in favor of American League Central teams there at the top, teams that were under 500 last year, is because I'll let you in on a secret, okay? And it's not much of a secret if you've been following baseball and just the awards for, years and years now. Manager of the Year is literally just most improved team award. Okay, I hate to be the bearer of bad news and spoil anything. And that's not an exact science. Obviously, Kevin Cash has won it a few times over. Maybe most improved isn't the word. Maybe just like most exceeded expectations award, right? That's pretty much what it is because it's hard to quantify a manager's performance. It's hard to, there's no like statistics or numbers outside of just straight up wins and losses that can really give you, okay, like this manager is better than this one because of X, Y, and Z. That's kind of an eye test thing, a feel thing, and something that you really are, if you're following the team at every day, you can speak on. But it's you national pundits can't just like drop in and just be like, oh yeah, like look at this stat. It proves that he's better than this guy. And there have been teams that have won a lot of games with managers that like aren't that great, right? In by most, opinions. So the Manager of the Year award is really just the team that exceeded preseason expectations the most, more years than not. Again, a couple exceptions in there. Storylines obviously matter a lot, but most of the time it's going to the team that's in the top 2 in exceeding expectations. And so I think with the Royals having such a big offseason, that makes the Royals manager a guy that a lot of people and a lot of the people that throw big money on these future bets are going to look at. And I think the Tigers, believe it or not, your Detroit Tigers are somewhat of a hot button and hot topic team to talk about in the light of dark horse teams to take a big step forward. There's several, quite a few actually, national shows that have been talking about, are the Tigers a team that could take a big step forward? Could they be in play for the AL Central, right? Just as we've had on this show plenty over the last several months. So it kind of, at first I was like, wow, that seems kind of bold. And then when you remember what the manager of the year award usually entails, I kind of understand why those two people are at the top. If a lot of people are really big on the Royals offseason and really big on them, improving again by 20 wins or something, then sure, he's a guy that could be kind of in the mix there. If the Tigers win the AL Central, I promise you, AJ Hinch is going to get heavy consideration for that award, if not win it. Obviously, a lot of that contingent on what other surprise teams in the American League do as well. But yeah, if you actually believe that the Tigers are going to win the Central or can win the Central, this is the FanDuel bet for you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because plus 550 is the best, but that's still a decent return. So last place, just for the record, last two, Pedro Grifol of the Chicago White Sox. So no one expecting a surprise here out of Chicago, plus 3,000. And then, man, my dog, Mark Kotsay, dead last, plus 6,000. That's twice as worse. That's double the odds of Grifol, who's second to last. That's how low people are on the A's. But like even this, like Bruce Bochy, 1,500, third worst in the American League. Rangers just won the World Series, right? But now it's, the Rangers have a good team. He should be good, right? So he's not going to win Manager of the Year. You get what I'm saying? That's just like go look at the history of the Manager of the Year award. Again, not an exact science. There's exceptions before, as somebody comes at me for like, what about this year? There are exceptions. Okay, there are. But more times than not, that's what it is. So that was just something that was interesting to me. And your manager is currently the Vegas favorite. A lot of people putting money on AJ to win Manager of the Year. That's kind of exciting. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. Like I said, plan right now is to be back tomorrow and be talking about the catching situation. But you'll get that episode soon. Just a matter of if you get it tomorrow or not. All right. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.